as Eugene mentioned earlier, it's great to see everyone here this morning, actually in person. We've had a difficult few years, so hopefully we'll have a great chat later on and good chats during the coffee breaks and the meal times. So Eugene's introduced my topic today, update on the process of the review of the rural water sector. So in keeping with the theme of the conference, a responsibility to act, the evolving role of the group water sector, I'm going to talk about today the rural water group and the group water sector, where it all began, where are we now, the review and some key messages, current challenges facing us and next steps. So as the Minister mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, is that okay? Yeah, it's just a bit of background noise. The group water sector and the rural water sector is a wonderful example of togetherness and community togetherness and working together, and in Irish, ag obair le chéile. And as he said, the rural water sector provides an essential service to families, farms and businesses in rural Ireland. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank the members, the volunteers and all the group members for all the hard work that you do. It's you that every day provide this essential service and keep the water flowing smoothly in rural water, or rural Ireland. So where did it all begin? Where did this start? So in 1957 there was a national polio outbreak, and at that time water was provided via village pumps. Actually, the first group water scheme was created at this time in Old Court in West Wicklow. And then from a government perspective, in July 62, 60 years ago, Minister Blaney initiated a Dáil debate, and they introduced the Local Government Sanitary Services Bill in 1962. And around this time, during the 1960s, the government policy was to extend piped water supplies to rural Ireland, and it included the Turn on the Tap campaign. And they relied heavily on the local communities themselves to set up the group water schemes supported by the local authorities at the time. And also, ICA and Muintir na Tíre were actually instrumental in helping to establish these locally community-owned group water schemes. So Eugene stole my party piece, so now I'm going to talk about this. This is a little film that was actually created in 1962 at that time. It was supported by the government. It's in the IFI archive player, and it's a dramatised film. It's encouraging, it was done at the time to encourage small farming communities and their neighbours to come together, ag obair le chéile, with a grant from the Department of Local Government to introduce pipe water supply to their homes. Now, it's about 20 to 24 minutes. It's available on the archive. Mark has very kindly cut it down to me for about 3.5 minutes. And as I said, it was released in 1962. It actually won a prize in the Cork Film Festival at the time in the education section. And it's narrated by a young Niall Tobin.
But outside the cities and towns, 4 out of 5 people still depend on sources like this. And it's very hard to keep an open well from becoming contaminated by cattle or seepage. If you live in an area for which a local authority scheme is planned or in progress, you don't have to worry. You'll have a good water supply scheme before very long. But supposing, like himself here, you live in an area where no county council scheme is proposed. What then? This area is out of the way. It's thinly populated. There are only 7 isolated farmhouses in it. For areas like this, the Department of Local Government will help you to organise a special group scheme which will provide a good water supply for you and your neighbours. All you need is a reliable source, such as a stream, borehole or dug well. Himself has invited the men from these 7 houses to discuss the starting of such a scheme. The first thing to do, he suggests, is to find out all about these group schemes. Even when an inspector from the department comes down to explain in detail how the scheme works, old John is not entirely satisfied. Between one thing and another, he says, a man is never done putting his hand into his pocket. I'm telling you, lads, these schemes are expensive, whatever way you look at them. The inspector explains that the overall cost of a group scheme is low because you do all the actual work yourself, guided by an engineer. As the scheme takes shape, old John can't help lending a hand in spite of himself. Well, it's time to make the tea. And with lashings of water everywhere, Jim still has to be told to wash his hands every day. So better call him in. However, he's taking a lot more interest in the place lately, and he does think that getting the water in was the best investment you ever made. And when the place eventually comes to him, he'll always think of it as the best legacy you left him.
A good piped water supply means better living and more efficient farming for every family in rural Ireland. But you must do your part. Find out from your county council whether they are planning a scheme for your area. If they are, I would ask you to cooperate with them in every way and to undertake to connect your house with the supply. If no scheme is planned for your area, get in touch with my department, who will help you with advice and with grants to provide your own private supply or to organise a group scheme. The next move is up to you.
Great. So from one Fianna Fáil minister to another 60 years later. So that's where we came from. So where are we now? So private water supplies, what is it? So we know private water supplies is water that's intended for human consumption, not operated by Irish Water or Uisce Éireann from now on. So private water supplies, made up of household supplies, small private supplies, are privately sourced group water schemes, which are divided into the exempt and the regulated, and then the regulated is further divided into the non-DBO and the DBO operated. We also have then our public water supplies. We've got our public sourced group water schemes, which are divided again into regulated and exempt supplies. So where are we with the scale of the sector? So households in Ireland are just generally, it's approximate public water supplies, about 83%, and then 10% of households approximately are on household wells, 2% public group water schemes, 4% private group water schemes, and about approximately 1% for the small private supplies. So where are we now with Exchequer funding? So the Rural Water Programme commenced around 1998 officially. So on this side here we see the capital spend, and on the right we'll see the current spend, the annual subsidy. So here from this time period, 98 up until the present, approximately over 1 billion has been spent on capital infrastructure. And we see here kind of around the middle 2000s, there was a large annual spend. Sometimes that was up on over 100 million. And the reason that was required, because at the time we had the infamous ECJ case in 2002. So, and we also had, this was a bit of heavy lifting to be done after that regarding upgrades, etc. And we also had the creation of the DBO model. So a lot of capital infrastructure was required there to be built. And then we go down here to about 2012. And that was kind of the ending of the DBO models. So it kind of petered out then. This is the spend now. The allocation is about 25 million per year, but this is where the spend has been a little bit below that every year. On the right then, we'll see the annual subsidies. So from this period, kind of the 90s to up to the present, approximately about 300 million has been spent. We see here around the 2017-18 time, that was after the Joint Oireachtas Committee recommended the increase in the annual subsidy rate, and that's where this rise is reflected in. So where are we now in terms of quality? Well, the quality of drinking water in private supplies is good, but it's not as good as it should be. The most recent EPA drinking water quality report in private group water schemes and small private supplies from 2020 stated that 1 in 20 private water supplies were contaminated with E. coli, and about 95% E. coli compliance rate was recognised in the private group schemes. And here on the right-hand side, we have a lovely graph, and it's grafting from 2004 to 2019. And we see here the wonderful increase in the compliance rate that has been experienced in the private group water sector. So if you think about it, in 2004 it was 60%, and that's not a long time ago. So we've had a great increase and great success rate, getting up to 95%, but we still are lagging a bit behind the public supplies at 99%, so there's still a little bit of work to do. So just looking at another parameter from this report in 2020, looking at the THMs and the trihalomethanes. So 93% of private group water schemes complied with the trihalomethanes standard. 13 supplies were cited on an EU infringement proceeding case against Ireland for failing to take the measures necessary to ensure compliance. Some interventions has happened in the interim, but unfortunately for us and for Ireland, case proceedings have now initiated against Ireland in relation to 9 remaining schemes. So just on to the review. So I talked to you last year about the start of this review, and it was starting. So early 2021, the department contracted Tobin engineers to do a research and information report for the department. As I mentioned before, assignment 1 and assignment 2 were the 2 breakdowns. Assignment 1 was a literature review report focusing on the national representation of the sector, and it's a lot of some of the data that I've already discussed. And assignment 2 then was a consultation process, and it's an output report, and it's looking at opinions, views, creating new data that we didn't know. Part of the project scope also included rural water and rural wastewater. And the key aspects of delivery were to look at the governance, the supervision, the funding and the monitoring within the rural water sector. So I've already talked about assignment 1. So assignment 2, what was it and what does it look like? So as I said, it was a broad range of consultation which was undertaken to inform the study. Then the information was collated because there was an extensive range of views and on the governance model for the rural water services. And then these views were identified in order to align them with broad themes and put them into a thematic analysis. Now, it was an open book approach. So individuals were guaranteed their anonymity, to be anonymous, and it was done from the representation of the cohort or the organisation as opposed to the individual, which was the right way it should be in order to get the correct result. So look, here's a list of all the consultees. I'm not going to name them all. You all know who you are, and thank you so much. Thank you for your experience, your information, and indeed your honesty to allow Tobin's to build a full, clear picture of the sector as it exists. So as I said, some of the key messages that came out were thematically aligned. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the themes, but very high level stuff, because I could be here all day if I went into everything individually. So looking at the DBO operated privately sourced group water schemes, the regulated ones. So it was felt that an appropriate term for the next round of the OMM contracts is required, and we know that is. And regarding the THM compliance that I already mentioned, it's felt that the hybrid model associated with this failure to comply rate. Going on to the non-DBOs, the privately sourced, also regulated, so the mirror image of the DBO cousins. It was felt that these schemes do not have the same level of protection from cryptosporidium. The average number of households in these schemes is only 82, and that's comparing to the DBO model. Their average household will be about 359, so they're larger. It's felt that some management structures may not be as strong, and it's felt that the most sustainable solution for some of these may be either rationalisation, amalgamation, or indeed interconnection to the public mains. Moving on then to the theme of the publicly sourced group water schemes, and these are the regulated as opposed to the exempt. So it's felt that the number of these schemes is falling, and we know that. Orphan schemes continue to be a problem. These are schemes without a management system in place. And it was felt that there was unclear monitoring responsibilities in some cases, because who owns the scheme? Moving on then to our small private supplies, our kind of commercial entities. It's felt that advice to undertake a risk-based monitoring is recommended. And although these small private supplies are regulated, they may not be known about and they may pass under the radar. And the reason for this is because if you are a small private supply and you're a water supplier, there is no obligation for you to register with the local authority. But there's an obligation for the local authority to monitor you. So it's very difficult for the local authority to monitor for you if they don't know you exist. So that's something that really needs to be thought of as well. Now, these are our exempted supplies. So these are a little bit of confusion it was felt in the exempted supplies. It's often assumed that the regulations do not apply to exempted supplies, but this is only for the monitoring and reporting. Every water supplier is obliged to comply with the drinking water regulations. Under Regulation 4, if you're a water supplier, you are responsible to provide water that's wholesome and clean to drink. So if you're a water supplier, you're legislatively bound by the regulations in that under Reg 4. So then on to household supplies. These are our wells. So as I mentioned earlier, we're about 10%. So we actually have a significant proportion in this country of individual household wells, 10.7% compared to England at 0.1%. It's felt that there's a particular risk when wells are co-located beside domestic wastewater treatment systems, and it's also probably it's a negative that these lie outside the monitoring and reporting requirements of the regulations, because as we know, Ireland has one of the highest VTEC rates in Europe, and many of those cases are associated with wells. So just a quick key message on domestic wastewater treatment systems. So you'll see the map here in the green, that Ireland is green. So this map represents the green areas are areas where the rural population is greater than 50% of the total population. So Ireland is one of them. We have a very dispersed rural population, and we've approximately 30% of our country is unsewered. And to put that into context, if you were to compare it to Germany or Spain, their household properties unsewered are less than 5%. So we have a large proportion of unsewered in this country. It was felt that if we looked at the National Inspection Plan, that it rightly focuses on the areas of highest risk. It's felt that lack of desludging and maintenance is an ongoing issue with systems that fail under the National Inspection Plan, and also felt that perhaps an unwillingness to pursue the enforcement and close out some legacy cases is also an issue. So we know from the most recent EPA report in 2001, about 50% of these systems are still failing. As I said, the biggest causes are probably desludging and maintenance. Householders may not be aware that under legislation they're legally responsible to maintain their own systems to ensure that they are not causing any environmental or public health causes. And just regarding the closeout cases, we know the plan started in 2013, and about 70%, about 3/4 of cases have been closed out, but there's still 25% yet to be closed out. So just some future challenges. So look, we all know about climate change. Climate change is going to be a huge demand on the rural water sector for water management and water demand. We had a recent hosepipe ban only a couple of weeks ago. We have rivers in the UK and Europe drying up, so our rivers are going to be scarce. Also a future challenge is the recast drinking water directive that's going to be transposed. I know that there's going to be a session on it later on, but it's going to be a challenge because the implications will be a challenge for all members of the rural water sector. There's more work going to be required on catchments under the upcoming River Basin Management Plan, and also the water environment, the abstraction bill that's coming up very soon. There'll be 3 tiers there regarding the volume of water that's going to be abstracted, regarding registration, licensing. The bigger one, more than the 2,000 volume cubed, would very unlikely affect many group water schemes. But tier 1 and 2 will. So look, where are we with current funding of the allocations of our current programme, 19 to 21? Let's get down and talk about the money. So at that time, in October 19, about 56.9 million was allocated for water, about 2.88 for wastewater, so approximately 60 million. And as the programme has commenced and has gone through its time, some other projects that didn't get allocated for funding at the time, but they were allowed on principle, have since been allocated. So we're up about 65 million of allocation now, not spend. So just looking at the measures that got the percentage of funding in that current programme. So we know that our Measure 3, conservation, Measure 5, our transition to public water sector, and our Measure 2, looking at public health compliance, such an important measure, were allocated the highest percentages. So I talked about future challenges earlier on, but now I'm talking about what are the immediate challenges facing the sector. Well, the first one, and it's been publicly raised amongst yourselves and the Federation in the Rural Water News earlier this year, we had a large underspend in the current programme from 19 to 21, and we all know we had our challenges with COVID and all the public health risks that were associated with that. So at the end of 21, there was only a third of the programme was spent. And early 2002, the department, we reached out to the local authorities and we sent out detailed surveys looking at every single project out there. Where are you now? What have you done? What will you do? Will it get finished? How much have you spent? And give us the timelines. And we're formally tracking all those projects religiously now. I say 3 monthly, but we're probably doing it a lot more detailed. The last one was 2 months. So look, other immediate challenges, rising energy costs. It's all around us. It's in the news every day. Nobody knows what's going to happen for this winter. THM infringement cases that I mentioned earlier on, unfortunately, Ireland now is preparing a defence and getting ready to file its defence against the case proceedings that have been initiated. So that's an unfortunate event. Other immediate challenges, staff resources in the local authorities. We're going to have imminent endings of the SLAs. Local authority staff moving to Irish Water or not. It'll be important for the rural water programme and the resourcing for the programme, and also resourcing that will be required for any implications for the drinking water, for the sector regarding the drinking water regulations. So look, what's our next steps? Well, first of all, the Tobin report that I mentioned, that's now will be final. The department ourselves will have to do a policy report on it. Then full considerations of the policy report and the official report will go to the Rural Water Working Group. It's a multi-stakeholder engagement group that represents the rural water sector from various members of the sector. And next then we'll be publicising a revised framework for a new round of National Development Plan funding under the upcoming multi-annual rural water programme, and that'll be launched in Q4, so very soon. So I advise everyone to be out there looking for projects, getting your heads together now and deciding what you're going to bid, because those bids will come in soon and it'll be imperative that you're ready to go with that. So look, lots going on, but finally, how do we get there? So we started, where do we come from? Where are we now? And how do we get there? So we see over here, old John, despite himself and his worries about putting his hand in his pocket, he couldn't help himself but getting out, getting involved, working with the community, ag obair le chéile. And here we have a recent picture of a very successful project, ag obair le chéile. So, as I said, there's lots going on, but I know, looking at the numbers here today, you're all passionate about rural water sector. I live in rural water sector myself. I'm a group scheme member, so I know all about it, and I'm confident that us all working together, ag obair le chéile, helping each other out, that we'll get there and continue the legacy that was created in 1962. Thank you.